All right, but man, today's Tuesday. It is April 25th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Here with Chief, as always. Chief, how are you?
Doing fine, feeling good. Ready to get after the week. Draft week, big week for the boys.
Draft week, big week. You're right. 2 days till draft. We'll see what we do. I don't know what's going to happen. But regardless, today we do have a pick six for you, so I know what's going to happen in there. I know the topics at least. I don't know the outcome on some of these stories, but we do know the topics. I would also like to note that tomorrow we're doing a reverse. Tomorrow will be a first-time movie watch. It'll be myself, Chief, and Clem watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Never seen it.
So I watched it yesterday.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, fired it up. It was like in the middle of the afternoon because I was like waiting for a hockey game to start. It's not that long of a movie.
It's 90 minutes on Netflix.
Yeah, I am a fan. I will say.
Okay.
It's very. I don't know. It's kind of me. I feel like it's,
A lot of people say it's the greatest comedy of all time.
I thought it was.
So it's one of those where like I wondered. I was like, is this going to get the juices going for the people listening? But the way older people talk about it and how highly it's revered,
yeah,
it's like you had to watch it. So I was like, this is a great time, great segment to do it for.
I had a teacher at Berkshire he was my favorite teacher ever, and he would reference it all the time.
Really?
All the time. So, and he wasn't that old at that point. He's probably pretty fucking old now because I'm pretty fucking old now. But yeah, I thought it was really funny. It was like silly funny, but there was like some moments where I'm like, I never laugh out loud, especially if I'm alone. But I like had a big smile on my face.
All right. Well, it's a good teaser for tomorrow's episode. Make sure you go check it out. Like I said, 90 minutes only. It's on Netflix, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. But today we do have a pick six, like I said, and we can kick it off with big news that came out yesterday.
Huge.
And I should say we're recording like a couple hours after it happened. We recorded the day before. The cable news networks, Don Lemon, Tucker Carlson, out.
Yeah, this is a big time shakeup because I think the Don Lemon stuff was the writing was kind of on the wall. The Tucker stuff was shocking to me. I feel like we should start there because he is the biggest name, the biggest star at this day and age, highest ratings of anybody in cable news. And the traditional cable news is Tucker Carlson, and like that, he's out. So, and they didn't even tell him. They said that the official press release and the reporting, I think Axios had the story first, was that they have parted ways. He was fired. And the reason that people are saying that he was fired is because if he knew that this was coming, he probably would have had a sign off on his last show, which was on Friday. And so, as you said, we're recording this on Monday. They're going to have an interim in there already. So he never got to do the sign off. And this is like a shocking, like sending big, like, ripples across like the entire media landscape. And it feels like we might be at like a turning point for cable news in general. At least that's how it feels to me. This to me feels bigger than when they lost Megyn Kelly and Bill O'Reilly too. Like I feel like Fox News had invested so much in Tucker Carlson. Like I was having a hard time finding what his salary was. I saw some reports saying he was making $35 million a year. I saw another one saying that he was making $8 million a year. Either way, big numbers. He also was basically their entire streaming platform was all based around him. They had Fox Nation where I think Portnoy was actually on that maybe like 6 months ago or so. But Fox Nation, like they're, a lot of these companies are trying to come out with streaming platforms. He was really the only person generating any sort of ratings, highest rated cable news show, highest rated streaming show. Fox News had really become Tucker Carlson, but they had a huge settlement. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
So where they agreed to pay out Dominion, which was one of the voting services from the 2020 election, $787 million. So they were being sued for $1.6 billion for defamation, and then all these text messages came out from Hannity. It was Hannity, Tucker, Laura Ingraham, basically saying that they didn't really believe what they were saying on the air, which is that there was these issues, and Tucker kind of basically got caught red-handed. He had said that he despises Trump, like he hates Trump. But then Trump actually sat down with him. Like, what was that, last week? I feel like they had, I guess, an exclusive sit-down interview not too long ago, right before Trump's interview with the Nelk boys last week. So, but it was just like they basically caught them lying and about, when they're basically just doing it for ratings and for clicks, which, I mean, that to me is the news, or has been the news for the last 6 years. But they went after this company, and that's not the only lawsuit. There's another one called, I think it's called Smartmatic. They're suing Fox News for $2.6 billion. So, and they're basically saying that they're going to refuse to settle, so that they're going to take that to court, and there's going to be even more dirty laundry aired. And it got to the point where it's like, maybe there's speculation I saw from Kyle Kalinske where maybe Fox had been like, hey, like, we need you to say this statement, and Tucker was like, fuck you, I'm not saying that. And so then they're like, all right, well, then you're out. So very it must have been very hostile, and there had been rumors that Tucker, it's like the show Succession that we talked about last week. There's the two sons. One of them is more liberal leaning. The other one is more, I don't know, in line with the father. And maybe that there's some real like butting heads behind the scenes between Tucker and Fox that's going back a while. And this was kind of like, all right, man, like, you're enough. Like, you're fucking out.
Yeah. I mean, it seems, you're right though. It does seem like a big point, because cable news in general, I believe, is kind of floundering, and he was kind of the last standing pole where it's like he makes up a lot of the revenue, from what I understand. I don't watch cable news at all.
Yeah,
like,
me neither.
At all.
Me neither. I will see his clips like on socials, like if he has like a 5-minute segment or something, it might pop up on there. But they do say that, like, cable news is, they make most of their money through basically getting the fee from like the built-in fee from the cable news networks. Having said that, there's only one person on cable news that does decently well, which I think they said 200,000 nightly viewers of younger people. So people like in our age group of millennials. Everybody else is like our parents are watching it. So Tucker was the only guy getting like a younger audience, and then they swept him out too. So it's going to be really interesting. I don't think that, I don't know, who knows what his contract is like, and what the what he's allowed to do in terms of like non-competes and stuff like that. I don't think that he needs Fox News at all.
No, he could definitely go somewhere else and just be just
as
popular.
Just go by himself.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Sorry, do his own thing. I should say. Sorry. I agree with you. Because like you said, he's very popular.
Yeah. Which I never really understood.
I can't speak to what yes or no. I can't. Like I said, the only time I've seen the guy is when he was in hot water, like a news story, or Dave's clips on there. That's it.
Yeah, I just feel like I don't know, like, I remember.
But it's crazy. I did see that. I did watch that Nelk Boys interview.
Yeah.
They get some huge guests.
They really do.
Yeah, no, they do a good job.
Yeah.
And Trump says in there, there's a guy like him. So it's interesting how.
And Trump doesn't like anybody that doesn't like him historically.
Exactly.
So for whatever reason, he likes Tucker. Maybe he just knows that Tucker will play ball and give him a fair shake, even if he hates him.
Yeah. I mean, I did see that they might plan on going to more middle ground.
As opposed to which is super right.
Yeah, I did read that. So like, it's going to be very interesting with who they replace him with.
Yeah,
because they replaced O'Reilly with him, and
I feel like, and maybe this is just my own bias, but I feel like Tucker is way bigger than even O'Reilly. Like, O'Reilly was huge, but Tucker just seems like he is more relevant. Like, my Nana watched Bill O'Reilly. I feel like more people watch Tucker, but I could be wrong.
Maybe. And then I don't know what else there is. The only thing that I saw of him right now worth note is he said he was upset that they didn't have the decency to tell him in person, and they just told his agent.
Yeah.
And then I saw CNN Communications tweeted that that's not true.
Yeah, that they said that he had the opportunity
Yes.
to speak. So he had a tweet that said, he goes, "I was informed this morning by my agent that I have been terminated by CNN. I am stunned. After 17 years at CNN, I would have thought that someone in management would have had the decency to tell me directly. At no time was I ever given any indication that I would not be able to continue to do the work I have loved at the network. It is clear that there are some larger issues at play. With that said, I want to thank my colleagues and the many teams I've worked on for an incredible run. They are the most talented journalists in the business, and I wish them all the best." So that was from Don Lemon this morning. Now, it has come out that Don Lemon is like, he's basically Ellen. Like, he's like the biggest asshole. Oh, yeah. Like, Vanity Fair had like a whole article that came out maybe in like, I want to say maybe December, like 3, 4, 5 months ago, with all these stories about like what an asshole he was. And like he was,
Really?
like would kind of target other black people. Like he went after Soledad O'Brien really hard. He's snapping at production people, like of like a guy that kind of universally hated by everybody that he worked with.
Really?
It's Don Lemon. So the fact that he says that he was not surprised, and he's like, there's larger issues at play. I think maybe the larger issue at play was that everybody hates your guts and your ratings suck. And when you have those two things working against you, it's hard to keep your position. So Don Lemon on his way out. CNN, it doesn't, I don't know. I feel like CNN, who's the white hair guy? I'm blanking on his name.
Cooper.
Right? I feel like Anderson Cooper is the Tucker Carlson, more or less, like the lead anchor for that network. And Don Lemon was kind of just like a guy. But we'll see how it plays out. It is just also interesting timing now. Like, all the election stuff is going to start ramping up.
Yeah.
They're on life support, it feels like, in a lot of ways as it is. So to have these two like major guys get pushed out right now is, and maybe it was like, well, it's now or never. Like, can we find somebody in the next 6 months, and then as like the primary season heats up, we'll be ready to hit the ground running in 2024 with like our new lead anchors. But
yeah,
who knows?
We'll see, man. And like I said, one more time, we're recording this like 20 hours before it drops. So I'm sure there's going to be more moving pieces.
Totally.
So look out for that.
Yep.
Next topic here, topic number 2. We want to talk about the war in Sudan.
Yeah, this one it's one of those things that's just getting completely swept underneath the rug. And it's that part of the world is just, it's been utter chaos my entire life. Like the Horn of Africa. If you look at Somalia, like Black Hawk Down, like that is effectively a failed state. I always pronounce this one wrong, but Eritrea or whatever it is, like same area, another failed state. Ethiopia is having like their own civil wars. Ethiopia had been like kind of on the come up, and then they were jockeying, and there was threats of war between them and Egypt over dams that they were going to build in the Nile. I think we might have done a podcast on that a few years ago, but there's like a lot of tensions between Egypt and Ethiopia, and then Ethiopia started having their own civil war, so all those projects kind of went away. Sudan had like the Darfur thing like 20 years ago, and their civil wars, like South Sudan became its own country. Then South Sudan started having civil wars, and now this situation just sparked off in Sudan. And it feels like there's no real end in sight there, because basically what happened is that you had this civil war, which was with South Sudan, and through that there was this paramilitary militia kind of created called like the Rapid Response Force. Then you had the original Sudanese army, okay? And then over the last 20 years, there's just been a coup after coup after coup and all these different fights and battles. And it got to the point that in 2021, this guy who was the head of the Sudanese army took over. And there was this plan to kind of like demilitarize and democratize the country, where it's like the military is not going to rule the country. We're going to have a democracy, and then the military is going to answer the democracy. And that was supposed to take place over a period of like, I think 2 to 5 years. But part of the stipulation for that was that this other force, this Rapid Response Force, was going to get folded into and become part of the Sudanese army, because there historically had been two completely separate factions. And the guy who was in charge of the Sudanese military basically didn't trust that they were going to democratize the country. So he's like, I'm not folding my forces into your forces and giving up all my power. So he's just like, no. So then this tension started rising and rising and rising. And this isn't like, well, we have like an Islamic faction or a Christian faction or let's say a communist or a capitalist. It's basically just being like two guys who are like, I'm going to run this shit. And the scary thing is they each have about 100,000 soldiers in their troops. So you got these two pretty large armies, and they just started battling it out in the streets. And there's been like these horrific reports of, killing civilians, raping civilians. There's been like 200 reported dead so far, and there's no real end in sight. And now there's starting to be speculation about, well, Russia might be backing one side, the West might be backing another side, but there's, it's a very like wishy-washy, hard to tell like who's in charge or who's with who. But you have the militia side, the rapid response force, for whatever reason, they're able to control a lot of like the resources in the country. So they're able to trade. They actually have control over like the gold trade. They have control over some of the oil, like they have oil in that country. So it's like, it's a very potentially explosive part of the world where it just feels like all of this, like that whole part of the world is just like descending into utter chaos. When, 10 years ago, it felt like for the first time, really in 2011, that's when South Sudan became a country that was kind of stabilized. Ethiopia had a growing economy that was kind of stabilized. And now it just feels like it's all falling apart and spilling over. And you're going to, it's just add it to the list of places in the world that are spiraling out of control and have just, international ramifications if it impacts the oil trade or the gold trade or everything like that, because gold is like hot in the streets right now. Like it's becoming like we can just get into that.
It's our next topic.
Yeah,
it's topic number 3. I'm
yeah.
sure a lot of people saw about this on Twitter and whatnot, but there was a massive gold heist in Toronto.
Huge. So the initial reports sound like they were overstated, where it was they're saying it's $100 million of gold. Now they're saying it's I've seen 15 million and 20 million, still a fuck ton of gold.
A lot of gold.
They're saying it could weigh as much as like 3,600 pounds of gold, and there are other valuables too. And the police are still being like very hush hush about it. Nobody knows where the gold came from. So Canada has like, in the Yukon and these other places, they have these gold mines, but they're not saying exactly where this gold came from. And they're also not saying where it was supposed to go to. It sounds a lot like Goodfellas though. It sounds a lot like Goodfellas, where they flew it in. There's a lot of speculation that this was actually an inside job, where it was Toronto Pearson Airport, which if people remember, Ryan Whitney fucking hates Pearson. Yeah, it's his number. He was probably high-fiving people when he heard this, because this is kind of a bad look for Pearson. But you dig into it a little bit, and for some reason, they decided to hold millions upon millions of dollars worth of gold at a third-party warehouse outside of the Toronto Pearson like security apparatus. So someone made a decision to put it there. Someone knew it was coming, and then there had to be someone who was like orchestrating, and it just, that's what like the I've seen a Canadian congressman speak about this, a retired Canadian customs, high level security customs person talk about it, where it's just like there's no way someone could have just stumbled upon like, oh, there's some gold sitting there, I might as well just jack it. It's like, no, like this was an inside job. And the initial, there was confidence by the Canadian government that they would be able to catch whoever did it, because they're saying it's going to be very hard to sell this gold, supposedly, but who knows. But it's it's just a wild fucking story
Yeah,
where
it
it's like
is.
there's just something about that word too.
Heist?
Oh,
Yeah.
you got a heist?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, fuck yeah. That's like one of the most exciting things in the world.
Yeah.
Like I have a buddy, like it's on the list that I have of episodes to do, but it's like a diamond heist. It's like the world's largest diamond heist. It was like maybe from 15 or 20 years ago. And it's just like you read a headline with the word heist in it, and you're like, fuck.
Oh, yeah. Especially like Heist of a Lifetime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What was that old movie where they did a diamond heist? It was with a black guy, and I don't know, it was a great movie. But it was like from the 90s, and it was just like they're just stealing diamonds and swiping them, and it's just like you do like I don't know, I don't have the balls to be a part of a heist. But I would love to be in like the planning part. Yeah. Like I can't do the execution, but like I want to be in the room when the heist is being planned, and then have like that Jimmy.
Yeah. See, everyone thinks I'm like a crazy person for having like fake scenarios, like my bar idea.
Oh, the bar idea is awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Think about like if that was a real thing. It's like an escape room, but besides that, you plan heists. And
Dude,
like, you try to go through with it. I'm like,
that could be like a great video game too,
yeah.
or like a computer game. I had another idea about your bar idea. There was like the immersion, like the Van Gogh immersion museum. You've seen that, where it's just like his paintings all over the wall. You've seen commercials or billboards for that.
Yeah.
So I did that a couple years ago. That was sweet. And then I did the Wonder Museum recently, which is like, I don't know, it's like a trippy like similar thing, but you like walk through all these separate rooms. All you need to do your bar is a warehouse, and then you just charge $20 to get in, and then you get charged for drinks at the various bars, and you just like walk through the whole thing. It doesn't have to, so that way you're not like, I don't know, having to turn it over inside the same space all the time. You just have like your 6 or 7 like most famous movie bars, and it's just in a warehouse, and it's like a destination instead of a place to stumble into.
Telling you.
I like this idea.
Telling you.
Yeah.
Staying on gold, topic 4 is about the de-dollarization.
Yeah, and this is where I was saying like gold is kind of hot in the streets, okay? Central banks around the world are buying up gold at the fastest rate since 1950, okay? So this was big news like a couple of weeks ago. I feel like it's kind of tapered off a little bit, but you had like the BRICS nations. I remember that was like one of those things we always talked about in college, like 20 years ago in econ, like all these BRICS nations, these emerging economies. But it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and an S, which I think it was South Africa, but it could be Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is involved in this too, but those countries are basically being like, fuck the dollar, which historically, since 1944, there was a Bretton Woods agreement where we would tie our currency to gold, and every other country would tie their currency to our currency. And that had been the system in place. And when we went off the gold standard in 1971, it was largely because a lot of these countries were effectively doing like capital calls on gold that we were supposedly holding in Fort Knox and other places. And they're like, hey, like, it's been enough time. Like we want our gold back. And there was speculation that we just didn't have it. So Nixon was like, yeah, we're getting off of this gold standard. We're going to deal. And it just becomes like a confidence play. And that freed us to basically print as much money as we wanted, and that's how you get like this hyper these inflationary situations, among other reasons, but that's a big one. We just print money, and that has it's kind of worked out fine. But now as we've going through COVID and the financial collapse of 2008 and wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and all these other places, people just don't have the confidence in our dollar that they used to. And we've also used it as a weapon. Okay, like we that was like one of the first things with the Ukrainian-Russian situation was like, well, let's close off SWIFT which is a transactional system to Russia. So it's like they had $300 billion in assets that they suddenly no longer had access to because you couldn't trade through SWIFT. So now these countries are getting together. It's like, well, and that's the other thing. Okay, there was an article somewhere, I'm blanking on where it is, that 30% of the world economies are sanctioned by the G7, by the 7 largest. So basically, like us and like the Western European powers. 30%. 30% are facing like economic sanctions.
Wow.
Which, you're able to do if it's like done in our dollars, because it makes it very difficult to trade. So now these countries are moving away from it. Saudi Arabia, for the first time ever, for the first time in 48 years, has said that we will start doing trades and basically selling oil in currencies besides the U.S. dollar. So it had really kind of been like a petrodollar. Like, it wasn't tied to gold, it was tied to confidence and other things. But when you have all basically major oil trades being done in the U.S. dollars, there's strength in that. And now Saudi Arabia is like, nah, we'll do it in all sorts of different things. So including the Chinese yuan and and Brazil said that, hey, like we're in on that deal too. So now all these countries are basically kind of trying to unshackle themselves from the dollar, and you see more and more countries buying up gold all over the place. Remember when, after 2008, you had all those like little mom and pop like strip mall stops of cash for gold places, commercials. Feels like that's what's going on here. Like, it's like an international major cash for gold situation. And because nobody really has confidence in our dollar, and that's a big problem, because that's what we use to finance all these different things. Like, they come in and buy our treasury bonds, and it's backed by the dollar. They have foreign investment. It's all tied to the dollar. And now that they're like, when our dollar, and when we have inflation here, and we kind of have inflation and these high interest rates on purpose, because things have gotten too out of control. But if everybody else's currency is tied to ours, well, there's a ripple effect on that. So now they're like, well, fuck, like, it's not our fault you guys went haywire printing all this money. And so that everyone's just starting to break away from it. And
Does America pivot in any way?
Fucking better. I mean, there are some arguments that say that it might actually, I don't necessarily believe this, but there's arguments to say that if you devalue your dollar, which is what would happen here, a dollar would be worth not as much. It does make it easier to export your own goods. So China has been manipulating their currency and keeping it artificially low for like 25, 30 years, maybe long, probably about that. And it's in an effort to make their goods cheaper. So they're able to basically outcompete us, like Canada, and that's like maybe a more close example, that they're able to export things more easily when the Canadian dollar is like, I think at like 80% of ours is kind of like their ideal situation for some of their goods. So there is some theory that like, well, maybe this is an opportunity to have, us be more competitive in like manufactured goods here to trade it around the world. But, and in the the other side of that coin is that like everybody's dollar that they have, like you have X amount, whatever in your bank account, it has even less purchasing power than it did or than it does now. So could the U.S. pivot? Are they buying up gold? Are they one of these central banks that are buying up gold? I don't know, but there's like a lot of angst around this, and it's been a source of power for us, economically, diplomacy, militarily, for 80 years, and not having that strong of a power base would be difficult. And there are people now who are pushing back, being like, 60% of all currency reserves in the world are in U.S. dollars still. 70% of all trades around the world are done in U.S. dollars still. So it's not necessary. There's some people say like, oh, this is happening rapidly and it's really bad. Other people are like, well, it's still the U.S. dollar, it's still America, it's still going to have like this place in the world. And, other countries have gone through this before too. There was a long time where France was, they were the reserve currency for the world. This is like the 1700s. Then it switched to England as they became, the Victorian era all the way up until we got it. Everything was done in the British pound. And as they transitioned, it didn't seem like they had these catastrophic economic issues. So we'll see how it goes. But it's not good. It's better to have a strong currency and a strong economy, and that's that's kind of where, it goes back to that, what the fuck happened in 1971. Yeah. And also like this could be like another one of those marks for Strauss-Howe too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
topic number 5, the Washington Commanders. It looked like they were getting purchased by the Josh Harris Magic Johnson group, but
yeah, they still might.
Yeah.
They still might. But there's this guy, who's like mystery guy, who's kind of come out of nowhere. His name is Brian Davis. So if you Google Brian Davis, you'll realize that he is a former Duke basketball player. So he played for Duke. It looks like he was on that 1992. Like the Christian Laettner teams, like he was winning national championships at Duke, and it like if you look him up, like you'll recognize. Well, I recognize him just because I feel like I watched those Sports Illustrated Year in Sports 1992 like videos all the time as a kid, those VHS tapes. But this guy, he has come in and said that so Josh Harris, he owns the 76ers and the Devils. He offered $6 billion, and Dan Snyder can effectively he doesn't have to sell to anybody that he doesn't want to sell to. Okay. Mm-hmm. Who he sells to has to be approved, but he doesn't have to just accept like, oh, I got a $6 billion offer. I accept. They can't really force him to sell it to the person that they want to sell it to per se. But they had a $6 billion offer. Brian Davis comes back, says, I got $1 billion available up front right away. The rest of it can be paid in 2 days, all cash. So a lot of times when you go through these, and there was a great 30 for 30 on this guy who almost conned his way into buying the Islanders. It's maybe my favorite one because he had I think he had like $1 million in assets, which is basically all in his house and his mortgage. The guy had like no money, and he was like basically almost came up. I think he needed like $40 million or $75 million because this was in the 90s, so franchises were a lot cheaper to buy the Islanders, and he was like one document away from doing it. And so it kind of like, it's like, how is this possible? Okay. So Brian Davis says he has all this money. Think of the billionaires that you know of. Okay. It's like Jay-Z's worth like $4 billion, right? Donald Trump's worth like $2.5 billion. There's all these people have like the famous billionaires. You telling me that there would be this African-American 1992 national champion, famous athlete that he says that he sold his the intellectual property to his business for $50 billion and nobody fucking knows about it? Like, how is that? It's not in Forbes. He's not listed as like one of the richest people in the world. He's just like, I have all this money, and he's like, me and my partners. And we're like, who are your partners? And he's like, well, it's just in my bank account. And he's like, I got $10 billion in the bank, and I can give you $7 billion for the team, and I got another $2 billion stashed away to do stadium deals, the improvements on the stadium or build a new stadium. And so then it was like, all right, well, who is actually, there's rumors because no one really believes that he has this money. And it's still like an ongoing thing. So there's reports that this was going to get rejected because no one really trusts that he has this money. But it seems like that's something you should be able to prove with a couple of wire statements and things like that. But there's speculation that it was actually Bezos was one of his like silent partners, because Bezos has been long rumored to want to buy the Washington Commanders, but Dan Snyder won't sell it to him because he just fucking hates his guts. So, which I hate Dan Snyder because he's a certified scumbag. He's getting investigated by like everyone. FBI, IRS, the state of Maryland, the Justice Department for the state of Virginia. Like everybody's on his ass. When I say the FBI, everybody's on his ass. So and then, and Bezos owns the Washington Post, or did. I think he might have sold the Washington Post recently, but he had been, basically lambasting Dan Snyder in the Washington Post forever. So Dan Snyder fucking hates his guts. And so he's like, I'm not selling to Bezos. So Bezos says, all right, I won't buy it. So then there's speculation that he was actually behind this guy, Brian Davis. The other one behind it is supposedly rumored to be MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, who's the new ruler of Saudi Arabia. and the guy who he runs the Saudi Arabia Sovereign Wealth Fund, and they've been in this business of the sports washing business, right? They bought Newcastle United for a couple of years ago, I think for $400 million. He's dumped a shit ton of money into that team. Like they're because soccer, the Premier League, you can just buy your way to being good. So last year that they in January they were looking like they were going to get relegated, kind of like my Forest. And then they dumped a bunch of money in. They kind of survived. They finished like in the teens, and then they spent a ton of money, and now they're like finishing the top 4 or 5 because it's just like you're able to do that. And so they're heavily invested in this sports washing. They got the Live Tour. They paid Ronaldo to come and play. They're trying to get the 2030 World Cup to come to Saudi Arabia. And now the speculation is, well, this really fits with what they're trying to do, and they do have unlimited funds. They truly have unlimited wealth, unlimited, because it's like
nobody knows how much it really is.
Nobody knows. There's like a conspiracy that the British royal family still gets a royalty from
I think we
them.
might have talked about that
before.
before.
Because it was like, there were civil wars going on in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, we might have.
And then they were like, all right, we'll back you guys. We'll back the kingdom of Saud, like this group of leaders, if you pay us like in perpetuity. And it's like, that's a rumor supposedly, but it's like that's where a lot of their family wealth supposedly comes from and is hidden, whatever. But that's like those are like the two. Could it be Bezos backing this guy? Could it be the Saudi royal family? And like this guy just like, I listened to an interview he gave on some radio station. It was like, he can't answer any questions about where his money, like any specifics. Like, how do you just fucking have $50 billion all of a sudden? It's like, that's just not a thing. Like, if you sell a business for that much money,
do you imagine
it
the
makes
Saudis
headlines.
getting in with Goodell? The Saudis in the NFL, that'd be crazy.
That's one where it's like, this was like a crazy answer from this guy, Brian Davies. And they're like, well, who are like your partners and your investors? He's like, my money came from white people. And he's like,
that's what the guy said?
Yes.
Oh my God.
It's like, it was, Jewish people and Italian people. And he's like, it came from white people. I was like, okay. But the way it works, if it is like an old boys club, they don't just let anybody in.
Oh yeah.
So you have to, the Packers don't count because they don't get a vote because they're a publicly owned team. But so there's 31 other owners. If you're going to have a sale approved to a particular new partner, you have to have 24 of the 31 voters. So this would have to get like vetted all the way through, and it would probably get shot down. It would probably end up going to this guy, Josh Harris event. $6 billion is nothing to sneeze
big
at.
Price tag.
But there is something to be said for getting it all cash, all up front.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. So very
interesting scenario.
Yeah.
Brewing.
Yeah.
Or not brewing. Or fake.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But it's crazy.
Yeah. It's interesting that they're like so into like this like idea of like washing their reputation. Like they're building that vertical or horizontal vertical city, whatever it is. They're trying to get the Live Tour. They're just splashing money all over the place because they have it. Yeah. And it's like, don't look at any of the other stuff we're doing because we're doing this cool stuff we want you to look at. Yeah.
Last topic, number 6, is UFOs are being discussed in Congress.
Oh, I thought we had pivoted to Bed Bath & Beyond.
Oh, we did. All right.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
Yeah. We're done.
Pivot.
Bed Bath & Beyond is going belly up. This could be another Bezos. I feel like he has killed so many businesses.
Like this?
Yeah. Like, I had to buy pillows the other day. You know where I got them? Bezos. And now anything that I want to get, I bought, like I have a water dispenser where I get the 5-gallon jugs. Everything that you could ever want is just on Amazon. So all these stores, these were like anchor stores of malls, Bed Bath & Beyond. Like if Harry knows, Geneva Commons, right in the front of the Geneva Commons, a big shopping complex on Randall Road out in the western suburbs. It's a Bed Bath & Beyond, and you go there once a year to get your mom something for Christmas. And apparently there were a lot of people who did that like me because now they're just out of business.
I know I'm wrong because obviously the market speaks for itself. Mm-hmm. But I feel like at some point the pendulum
Has to swing back.
right?
Swing back to what?
I don't know.
To people
me,
going to stores?
of course, the experience of hopping in your car, going there, finding a parking spot, going there, to finding something that you want, they don't have it in stock or in your size, and waiting in line to check out. Like, the process is long. It's grueling. It's annoying. It's not fun. But at the same time, it's also not fun to hit page number 8 of 844.
It's impossible.
You know what I mean? Like, I get just... Well,
have you ever returned anything you bought online? Because I haven't.
Never.
Right. So
Never.
You get something, you're just like, well, this is... Remember when I bought those Allbirds? This is like 2-3 years ago. I bought them online. I thought they were red. They showed up. They're just bright pink. I'm like, I guess I got to wear pink shoes for like a year. Yeah. And I feel like that's how most of my online purchases go. It's never exactly what I think it's going to be. So I wish this was still more of a thing, but it does feel like it's dead. And
you know what I mean? Like, how can you really tell that towel is comfortable just from looking at it and reading what some other asshole who you don't even know, who you would probably...
Who could be just the person working for the store.
Exactly. And you would maybe never... Like, there's so many people who, like, maybe I don't really trust his judgment on clothes or food or whatever, and you're listening to that person.
Imagine if it's like White Sox Dave. People, and we're just judging products. You're like, all right, trust that guy.
This guy.
I'm trying to think of like another person we could use for that.
White Sox DW Wildcat 99.
Yeah,
like,
WSD 24.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's just like, all right, like I might trust him for baseball mitts, but I'm not trusting him for, I don't know, dinnerware. Like I don't know. But it's just, and you're right. Like there is something to. I think you and I are both more old fashioned kind of guys in general. But
that's
yeah. So it's I don't know. It's one of those things where it's just like all these businesses are going by the wayside, and it's also interesting to me that look, how long has Amazon been around and killing it?
I don't know.
10, 15, 20 years,
Killing it though is the key
10?
word. So it's 20. Do you remember it I don't remember it in 2012. No, so I wouldn't even say that.
I bet you it was
2013.
probably.
Sorry.
I mean, I know it started in the 90s as like a online bookstore. But
yeah, like I think I got a few books from there because I graduated college in 2013.
Okay.
So I think I got a
Yeah.
couple books from there maybe.
I mean, it was already a monster business, probably worth like several billion dollars at that point. But I guess my point is like how some of these businesses didn't pivot to incorporate more of the online stuff, and then they could just like limit their stores, where they're paying rent and all this stuff, because Bed Bath & Beyond, their website is going to remain open for a while as they wind down the business and try to move all their different assets. But it's like you should have had like a more robust way of like moving your products, on the internet before, just being like, hey, Amazon's killing it. Like, I don't know. It felt like the writing was on the wall.
Yeah, but I think the biggest thing that Amazon killed, in my opinion, was obviously, I think their interface is pretty easy and seamless, and it's like, it's quick, it's presentable. But I think it's the 2-day shipping is what got everyone.
Dude, a lot of times it's same day.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking like groceries. Like there are times you just order.
I ordered something the other day and it said 5 to 7 business days. I was like, ugh.
I can't wait.
Figure it out.
Long. I need it right now.
I figured it out.
Yeah, but a lot of times it would be like, yeah, it'll be there by 7 o'clock tonight.
Yeah,
and it's like or if it's 10 a.m., you're like, all right, awesome.
Yeah,
and it blows my mind. They have those. Did you pass their like distribution centers just over the Wisconsin border on the way back from Milwaukee? It's fucking enormous how big some of these places are. So
that was the only chance those companies had. They should have banded together and be like, yeah, let's all work together. We'll all work out of these distribution centers and we will form our own shipping company.
Yeah. And I wonder why like Target and Walmart are able to survive and Amazon isn't.
I think Walmart's largely based in smaller towns where, people count on them for grocery items and whatnot, which I know could be also ordered on Amazon, but they don't.
Well, that's what the south and west side of Chicago are going to have to do now. You see that?
Yeah.
Four Walmarts were shut down just basically were getting looted too much. So that's a real problem.
I don't know if that was it. I think it was just because they weren't making profit.
That's
Well, one was in Lakeview though.
There were
one was in Lakeview.
I think there was 4. Oh, they showed down the one in Lakeview too.
There was 4 of them. One of the 4 was in Lakeview.
I'll send you the statement in the video,
right.
But it's like
I didn't see that as the reason.
They're getting like ransacked,
really,
and and that's like that kind of there's that term it creates. It's like a food desert, where it's like these that was the grocery store of note for that community, and now it's like now where do they get their food? That's a real fucking problem.
Yeah, it is.
And I don't know. I feel really because it's probably I saw something else where it's like. New York is having all kinds of crazy theft and stuff too, but it was like 98% of all the theft is done by like 250 people.
The same people, yeah.
Yeah, over and over.
Yeah.
So it's like that. If you have a city of 8 million, and I'm sure it's a similar number in Chicago too, where you have like a very select minority of people.
Yeah.
Doing all the damage, and then they just release them. Well, now you got thousands, maybe millions of people in the community that rely on those stores and those local businesses that aren't going to have access to them because you got a few idiots, knuckleheads running around ruining everything.
Yeah. And
it's like I don't know what the answer is or how to stop that, but it's really going to damage people's lives.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah, it is. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right then, Chief. I had one more point on that, but whatever.
Bed Bath & Beyond or food deserts or what are we talking about?
Bed Bath & Beyond, R.I.P.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. All right, everybody. That's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, comment, do all the above. Tomorrow, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Myself, Chief Clem, Netflix, 90 minutes. See you there.